And what happened in those days was frozen. I was frozen. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get my face washed. Somehow Jonah was always very well dressed, which is so funny because now I let him dress himself and it's a very different vibe. And maybe that's part of like the energetic freedom I needed. But believe it or not, the yoga actually didn't help at first. Getting still, getting quiet, or at least the yoga as I had been defining it. The yoga as the West defines it, the poses. Anytime I came to my mat, it was too quiet. It didn't feel good in my body given my tear and what was going on with my pelvic floor. I actually needed something a little bit more intense, a little bit more movement based, a little bit more dancey. But what I did start to do is lean into the quieter, more contemplative practices, because that was the other part of it is like, I didn't have 2 hours to do a movement practice, right? I had 10 minutes.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm Monica Verga Alborno, and this is the Wand Her Wild podcast, a space for modern mothers reclaiming their wild, living with intention, and redefining what it means to feel fulfilled while raising a family. Here we explore mindful motherhood, conscious parenting, feminine rhythms, and the power of self-discovery. Guided by curiosity, we share honest stories, soulful conversations, and actionable steps you can weave into your full everyday lives. Hi, welcome back. And I have a guest with me today. And it's been a couple weeks since we've had a guest. We've been super busy getting the audio event out where I was speaking with so many different people over that period of time where we've had a little hiatus from guests. So I'm really happy to have Sarah here. And we've been trying to get this happening for a while now. Like, I want to say like 6 months ago, we connected and we were like, oh, we have like so many synergies and things happening. And we were just excited to connect. So I'm really excited to have you here. And I want to start by just sharing a little bit about you. Sarah Ezrin, she is the author of the multi-award winning The Yoga of Parenting. She's a highly sought after yoga and meditation teacher, a maternal mental health advocate, and a digital entrepreneur based in the San Francisco Bay Area. She helps moms find grounding and presence so that they can stop losing their shit. I love that. And start showing up as the moms they want to be. So really just keeping it real. And I love that you are a published author. And I was sharing before we started recording, I kind of came across you originally because you are a freelance writer for a lot of publications and you just share so beautifully in your Substack. And every time I come across your writing, I'm just so blown away with your messaging and what you have to share in the realm of motherhood and parenting. So I'm really excited for this conversation. And I want to take things back to begin with a little bit to when you first became a mom, when you first became a parent. Your postpartum period, you've openly shared, was filled with some challenges. You faced postpartum anxiety, and that kind of was the trajectory point of what set you on a path of being so passionate about as yoga as medicine and walking through that. So I would love to, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I would love for you to kind of just share a little bit about those early days of becoming a parent and how that really inspired you, what supported you during that time to move through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I loved the summit. I signed up for that and I got to hear those little audio clips and all the different experts you brought in and everything you're doing in the motherhood space, from the family focused retreats to your podcast to your Substack. It's really incredible. And I wish that I had had this kind of resource 6 years ago when I was newly postpartum with Jonah. So as mentioned, yes, I am a longtime yoga teacher. I was convinced that I was just going to squeeze the baby out. And I laugh now because it's like, oh my goodness. And then get back to teaching. Like when I was going on maternity leave, I was like, see y'all in 6 weeks. Like, I don't know why I had this illusion, but I did, or delusion, whatever you want to call it. And of course, that's not at all what happened. It ended up being a very traumatic birth. And, I'm happy to go into those details. I share them, often, but I want to get to the crux of what you were asking. And then pretty shortly after I gave birth to him, not only was it was traumatic birth in that in the physical sense. I had a stage 4 tear. There was, the hormone drop was completely intense, the postpartum anxiety. But then COVID happened, so it's like here we're being thrown into the gauntlet of motherhood, and we don't have family at the time. We didn't have very much family around. We only had my brother who had a 1-year old, so it's not like he was like they were drowning themselves. And my husband's mom lives in Philadelphia. My dad is in Toronto. My sister was in LA at the time. So COVID hit and everything shut down. And then we couldn't even pay for outside help. And we were just this little island. And for me, it was like an island of anxiety and fear. And it really overtook me. It got to the point where I was just talking to someone today about this, like, because I'm perimenopausal. Now I'm jumping ahead. I'm like, now it's perimenopause anxiety, but that like my body feels the same, but I can function now. Like I can like get up and go and do the things that I need to do. I'm uncomfortable. I feel like someone's mad at me all the time or like I'm falling off a building, but like I'm not frozen. And what happened in those days was frozen. I was
Mm.
frozen. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get my face washed. Somehow Jonah was always very well dressed, which is so funny because now I let him dress himself and it's a very different vibe. And maybe that's part of like the energetic freedom I needed. But believe it or not, the yoga actually didn't help at first. Getting still, getting quiet, or at least the yoga as I had been defining it. The yoga as the West defines it, the poses. Anytime I came to my mat, it was too quiet. It didn't feel good in my body given my tear and what was going on with my pelvic floor. I actually needed something a little bit more intense, a little bit more movement based, a little bit more dancey. But what I did start to do is lean into the quieter, more contemplative practices because that was the other part of it is like I didn't have 2 hours to do a movement practice, right? I had 10
Yeah.
minutes. And so, as we tell ourselves in the West, yoga is poses, yoga is movement, it's exercise. Well, no, it's anything we do to still our mind. So I started to lean into journaling more and coming back, I should say, because I've always journaled, and my writing and just free flow writing, meditation, different kinds of breath work, getting outside. And then I'm just going to be fully honest, and I had to get help, right? I had to seek help. I had to find the right team, and I chose to go on SSRIs. I chose to get a psychiatrist on top of the therapist, on top of our couples counselor. Like I needed the support, but it brought me back into my body and it put my feet back underneath me. And then all of those practices were like this beautiful cumulative effect of a toolkit, right? Everything together. I always was thinking it was just going to be one thing. Oh, if I just do yoga, like physical poses, then I'll be healed from my anxiety. No. Or if I just go to therapy, I'll be healed. No. If I just have a baby, if I just fall in love, if I just lose 20 pounds, all the things that we tell ourselves, right? And no, it ended up being this incredible toolkit of practices. And yoga really is kind of the umbrella of them all, even though we wouldn't necessarily think of it that way here in the West, because it's anything we do for connection and stillness.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the things you're touching on, a lot of women in our community can relate to those, like becoming a mom for the first time during COVID, that isolation, that extra layer of not knowing if your baby is physically safe to get out there and do social things, right? And you're dealing with all these different kind of emotions where should I go to the play group? Should I stay isolated? What like there was all these extra dynamics that we were all moving through. I was actually telling someone recently, like, I ended up with a traumatic birth experience different from what you're describing, but I was in an emergency C-section. The baby came and my husband had to leave the hospital. He couldn't see us for 5 days, and I stayed in the hospital for 5 days recovering. Um, and we were all by ourselves, and we were in a foreign country, so nobody could come and watch, like so it's just so wild, and I hear people mention these things all the time, and, just thank you for sharing what you went through and just also being so honest with how you supported yourself to move through it. Because there's a lot of people listening that are like, "Yep, I had some scenario of that happen as well," and maybe are still processing it now, right? Even if it's been 5, 6 years
Yeah.
later.
And thank you
Um,
for sharing yours too, because I think I don't think people are processing it, to be honest. I think all of us are turning around with these kindergartners and we're all like, what is going on? Why am I so under resourced, even in countries where there is support? What's missing? What's like we never really got that. We were robbed of that first year. In the way that it was, I don't know, traditionally, like, because it's we are social creatures as mammals. So we all have to give ourselves so much grace. I mean, even the people that had healthy, they were healthy births, obviously, we're healthy and our babies are healthy. But even the people that had fairly smooth labors were still then by themselves, right? They were still like left alone, or people had to be in, it's so yeah, I think all of us and no matter the age of your children, but we're talking about any of the people that were postpartum at that time or giving birth at that time. Let's all give ourselves like a big hug because that was abnormal as social creatures. We're meant to be surrounded by others. We're meant to be cocooned by those we love. And especially we're partnerships. If you have one, that's our attachment figure, right? So yeah, I'm sending you so much love and big hugs too. It's brutal. That's
yeah,
really brutal.
thank you. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Not everyone has processed it, and it's a journey. Um, but that is where I'd like to kind of lead now is your book. I'd love to hear more about like when you started getting the creative downloads for it. What inspired you to start writing it, and what pieces did you feel were really important to have in there for mothers in the future to use as a tool when they were working through the postpartum period and
Yeah.
beyond?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I interview some grandparents in there too because I think, it's like those relation not that it's about their grandchildren, but about how they're relating to their children now with them. Their children happen to have children. I think Eve Rodsky, like I don't remember if she coined it or not, but the woman that wrote Fair Play and is phenomenal. She likes to say research is me search, right? Like that was what she said. She says in a lot of her early interviews about creating the Fair Play method, and that was very similar to what was going on with me. I mean, I've always been a writer. I have written my whole life. I just found one of my first diaries and I started it when I was 7 years old. Okay. Like my handwriting was better then now, by the way, than it is now, which I don't understand. But it was like this beautiful cursive. And it was like, everyone says I'm going to be a writer. Like I have always, always been a writer. And that was always a form of catharsis for me. And whether it was diaries or journals, which are really the same thing, just now we're like older, or writing essays or writing for publications, it was always a form of therapy for me. Similarly, books and reading and words have always been an escape hatch, and how I'm an autodidact. I would much rather read about something and highlight it than like have to I mean experiential is its own thing, but like I love to read to learn. So after, I have this traumatic birth and I'm thrown into the gauntlet. Like, by the way, I'd never changed a diaper before my son. Okay. So like I wasn't even sure if I wanted to have kids. I was like happy to be single and traveling the world. My husband has very strong family values and family is his higher power. And he said to me, I was put on this earth to be a father. And I was like, well, like, just to let you know, I don't know. But now I'm like, okay, this is obviously like the most fated and amazing journey. But I didn't really have that kind of a background in it. So what I did is I read every book under the sun like a mother, bringing up Bebe, which you probably read too, because she was talking about raising babies in Paris. And anyway, all those pregnancy books I read. And they really didn't prepare me because the pregnancy was so intense and unique that I was like, okay, so I got all these great books. I have all this good information, but I'm still feeling something's lacking. Let's read books about postpartum and let's read books about early motherhood. And that was where I was really shocked at, and especially conscious parenting, at how, what's the word, like paint by numbersy things were. Like they were really methodological, methodological. Yeah, you can tell I'm a writer, but I'm also in perimenopause. I don't even know my words. They were like methodologies, right? Like it was like, you must follow this to do this. And I remember, like, we were in, a mommy and me group, which we had ended up meeting online because everything shut down, and one of my friends that was in there was like, "I didn't do the script right. I don't think I supposed to get down on the floor first and get to their level, or was I supposed to say the word?" Like, it was like people were starting to feel shame for not being able to follow these strategies. And the other thing with those stories too was so much of them were like, and then they came to me and I coached them and everybody was happy. And the parents like thanked me and sent me a bottle of wine. I don't know, it just was all very tight, neat bows, and that's not what was happening in front of me. So then I was like, well, okay, the yoga tradition and in the books within my lineage, like all of that beautiful philosophical ways of thinking and really the early origins of psychology, if you go back to it, I'm like, what if we start to apply this into parenting? Maybe there's a book that's like a yoga about yoga and parenting, and I couldn't find anything. Then I found books on Buddhism and parenting, some amazing resources, by the way. And I highly recommend like John Kabat-Zinn, Hunter Fields did a great one, Hunter Clark Fields. But I was like, oh, where's the yoga words? Like, where's the yoga? Where's the movements? Where's the languaging? Where's that focus on connection? So it was more like writing the thing that I needed to be reading. And I really wanted to write something that was not procedural. That was the word I was looking for. That was not procedural and not like, here's a bunch, 10 steps to da 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 da. I wanted to give people a whole, like, again, toolkit, right? I wanted to hand them a suitcase that they could then pick through and figure out the things that worked for them.
Yeah, I love that approach. I can relate to that so much, like, that rigid piece of you feel like there's nothing quite out there that fits what you need in your home because these gurus out there, as you said, they just kind of feel like, "Oh, I can figure out your kid," but no, you can't. No one can quite figure out their kid but yourself. So I'm very much into intuitive parenting myself, where I just really feel into what my kids need because nothing quite ever seems to fit. And then, yeah, you feel like maybe there's something wrong with you or your kids at the end of the day, right? Which isn't healthy. It's not supportive. So I love the approach of using yoga and parenting that seems so much more fluid and really making it your own. And again, not just the positions you're speaking of, but really just the stillness and the different elements that yoga brings. Is there anything that you wanna share from inside the book that really speaks to you, like something that stands out that you wish you had known yourself when you were first becoming a mother?
That's a great question. I don't think I've been asked that. I will say, like, something that I think is special about the book was that I also, instead of it being like, these are my clients and everybody's cured, I went to all the parents I knew and admired that I knew were longtime practitioners. And I was like, what the F? What is happening? What is this thing? Like, why am I so overwhelmed? And they were all incredibly real with me. And I don't know if I was hoping or expecting, but I thought, when I would ask them, like, what does your practice look like today? That they would be like, oh, well, now the kids are older and now I have my 45 minutes back. But none of them answered that way. None of them, even those whose kids had grown into teenagers. They're like, my practice is staying calm when my teenager is slamming a door in my face. My practice is now laying down on the ground and breathing for 5 minutes. And the permission of that, the spaciousness around that, and I mean, you can only I'm still very hard on myself, right? I wish I could be sitting here and be like, okay, well, the book's been out for, 3 years and, I never beat myself up anymore. But like, even today I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't done enough. And so I think books like this and resources like this, and then community, hearing the stories from other people that you respect and admire, or maybe you don't even know them, but people that are ahead of you on the path a little bit, that supportedness and getting to absorb their voice inside of you, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, yes, I love that. Sarah, I wanna ask you some rapid fire questions now, if you're ready.
Yes.
Here we go. I've got 6 rapid fire questions. The first one is, what is your favorite yoga pose for grounding?
Mm. So this has changed. Should I be doing rapid fire answers too? Am I supposed
Yeah, I mean,
to
kind
you don't
of.
want I can't I am a writer. I'm like, let me give you an essay on
I can
why here's 4
yeah, a little
pages.
story.
Okay, so I used to say like child's pose would have been one of them, but it's actually become a bit uncomfortable and suffocating for me. So that's like, when you're down and like folded in.
Yeah,
So I would say the most grounding is when your body's on the ground and your legs are up on a wall, or your legs are, they can be up on something. So what's called legs up a wall. So it's actually even more exposing. And yeah, that's my favorite. It's like, so I'm being held by on both halves.
good one. Oh, love that. What is your favorite yoga pose to do with your kid?
Well, we have the most fun. I mean, they do one of the things we do is like a whole sequence where you're doing like the vinyasa, or whatever the flow is, what people colloquially think is like vinyasa, where you're like going from plank into up dog and back to down dog. We do this where they like hang on to me like little monkeys. So their arms they're choking me. Their arms are around my neck. It's real. It looks cool on a video and I'm like, oh, they're like their arms are around my neck. And then we go like plank is that upper push up. And then I'll lift my chest up into a back bend. And then we bend and they try to hang on as I go back into downward facing dog. That's probably our most fun.
I love that. That's amazing. I can agree with that as well. My kids are also always hanging on me like a monkey, and they enjoy that one. What is a daily ritual that you can't live without?
A daily ritual that I cannot live without, or that I do not live without, because there's certain things that I like make sure to do every day. A daily ritual that I can't live without is going to be some sort of yoga practice. I realize that's such a like cop out answer because it can be movement, but it's really anything that is that moment of connection. I'm very open about being in the Al Anon program, and we have daily readers as part of the 12 step program. And like just even reading one page to me is considered a yoga practice. So maybe that's the one thing that I do that day. Or maybe it is I get to sit for 7 minutes and read the book, or maybe I'm just sitting, right? It's like, as long as I'm doing one little thing that is that form of stillness and connection, then that to me is a job, is a day done. And if I have my way and my kids don't wake up too early and I'm able to wake up, then usually I have like 4 or 5 that I do in the morning that I make sure to do.
Awesome. I love that.
But one is enough.
I love that. At least you carve out time for at least one of those. So, are you a coffee, tea, or matcha, or what's kind of like your hot beverage of choice?
The hot beverage in my cup currently is a latte, a single shot latte. But in the mornings, I do black tea because my mom was British and she loved PG tips. And I just love tea with milk in the morning. It just, I don't know, brings me back to traveling in the UK, and it feels like a
Yeah,
connection to her. It's, very, so I don't do like coffee in the morning. I don't do coffee pots. I love hearing the tea kettle running. That's probably another practice of mine. And then but then around like 10 a.m.-ish, then I'll do my latte, my single latte.
I love that. That is so British. And even like some of the African countries I used to live in
Mm,
that had like the British occupy them, that was like the way they started their day. Black tea
yes,
with milk. I was like,
yes,
that's
yeah.
interesting. I love that. So what are your music vibes during yoga? Are you like a no music, or like what do you usually have some type of ambiance going on?
Oh, no, I'm a DJ. I DJ for KCRW. I'm just kidding. That was like in LA. NPR was our national public radio, and it was also the local station was KCRW, and they had all these amazing DJs on there that would come in and like do, they just like they like had their radio show on there, right? It was all public radio. I have always loved playing music in my classes, and I like using like a wide variety. So it's not just like instrumentals and like music. Like I'll play Beyonce, I'll play rock and roll, I'll like throw in a good blend of things. I mean, as I'm moving more these days, again, I mentioned earlier, my practice used to be a little more rigid and kind of still and very breath based, but now I want to almost add in the dance element to it too. So anything with a great beat. Anything Sophie Tucker is amazing, but just a wide variety that gets you moving. And then, of course, also the calming stuff too. But I like it to be really nuanced and have a lot of rhythms to it.
I love that. And my last rapid fire question is, what is one one word to describe motherhood for you?
Motherhood right now?
Mhm.
Like drowning? No.
One word or a phrase, whatever is popping in your mind.
That it's really like the phrase of it, which is like, "What a privilege to be a guest house for these souls."
Oh, I love that. That's so perfect. Yeah, yeah.
They are not my purpose, I am not their purpose, right? I am not here to mold them and shape them and tell them what to do with their lives. I am just this guest house where I get to temporarily care for them and shelter them and make sure they're warm and safe. But like any guest house, they're going to leave at some point, they're going to go on and form their own lives. And so it's just really honoring the privilege of the temporality of it, but also like the high honor of the protector vibe of it, right? And that part of the role.
Goosebumps. That was
Mm.
so beautifully said. Thank you for that. That's such a good way to start to wrap up. And before we go, I would just love for people to know where they can find you, where they can connect with you and read your book, get your book.
Yeah. So my book is available wherever books are sold. It was published through Penguin Random House, so it depends. I know you have a lot of international listeners, so I don't know if it's Amazon or whatever, but Penguin Random House is the main publisher. And then as far as connecting, I love hearing from people. I love receiving DMs. I love receiving messages through my website, but Instagram is probably the place where I'm the most active. And so any questions you have, I try to share resources on there. And I used to be better about doing little practices, but Monica knows, like like can't even, it's like getting things done. Getting things done is a little more challenging these days, but I still show up on there. I try to be on there every day. I definitely read all of my messages and I just love interacting with people and hearing what moms are going through. And just it feels like group therapy for me. That's what Instagram is for me. Instagram's like a
Yeah.
giant group therapy. And I'm like, yes. So please share your experiences, comment, tag me in things. I would love to hear from you.
That's awesome. I love that you're using Instagram in that way because it can be a very toxic place, and there's also so many awesome people showing up there. So,
Hmm.
thank you for being one of the ones that I am always checking out your content there. So it's nice to have
Thank
that
you.
connection.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah. Well, thank you so much for joining me and just for everything you're doing. I'm going to keep reading everything you're putting out there. And thank you for the work. Thank you for sharing everything that's so intimate and personal with those of us who are reading because it's just nice. I know I comment back to you quite often like, oh, I needed to read that today, or like, thank you for publishing this. So just keep doing what you're doing. And thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate you. And thank you for everything you're doing. Like I said, I wish I'd had this 6 years ago. So, we had our experiences and then we grow our passions out of that. So thank you for everything that you're doing for moms everywhere, all around the world. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. That means so much. Thanks.